Bonjour à tous, bienvenue.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this EURALO Round Table. I would like to start by thanking all of the participants, and in particular those who will speak during this session. I am certain we will learn a lot for the next round of new gTLD, the 2026 program. One of the reasons I am speaking French is that I would like to use the metaphor of cooking. I want to know whether ICANN prepared this application program with a new recipe, or is it just the 2012 recipe that we are warming up, or is it something else? We have a 3-star chef in ICANN in the kitchen, and I will now give the floor to our cook at ICANN. Natalia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. My name is Natalia Filina. I'm Secretary of EURALO, and I'm happy to be a moderator of this roundtable. We look forward to a comprehensive view from different sides of our community about new gTLD program. I will not take a lot of your time, so let's get started. I would love to invite to the microphone Chris Mondini, Vice President and Stakeholder Engagement and Managing Director, Europe, ICANN. Chris, please give us an introduction and tell us more, maybe some updates about new gTLD program. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's great to be here. I'm Chris Mondini. I'm responsible for engagement in the European region, but for the new gTLD next round, I have a global responsibility to help communicate the program to potential applicants and others who may have interest in knowing that it exists. When I tell this story to outside audiences, and I'm happy to tell you more about how they react, I always point out that the reason ICANN and its community is doing this is because it is our mission to produce consumer choice and competition envisioned with this program. And handily, for me, it's a very visible thing when I'm trying to explain to a friend or an uncle about ICANN. Explaining a domain name address and what the top level domain is, it makes something very concrete. Approaching the applicant support eligible communities, people on this call are well aware there's a lot of variety and hopes for communities and organizations. The non-Latin scripts are especially a hallmark of more inclusion possibilities and innovation. The next slide is another one that I suspect everyone here is very familiar with. And we reached a really important milestone on Friday when we published the tranche of applicant guidebook language for public review. The amount of work up to now that's gone in is quite staggering. The IRT itself has been on 144 calls, and that's well over 180 hours. Imagining all of the reading, reviewing, redlining, editing, digesting that happens between them, it's quite spectacular. Two things are different than the last round, which I think we'll hear a lot about. The applicant support program, which we affectionately call the ASP, was launched. The application for that and the eligibility for that was determined over the course of this calendar year, well in advance of the intended April 2026 opening of the application window. Another efficiency gain is opening a window for Registry Service Provider, or RSP, pre-evaluations in advance, which allows for efficiencies, less repetition, and getting systems in place well in advance of the opening of the formal windows. As a result of the outreach efforts and collaboration with the community, among applicant support programs, we've just crossed the number of 30 applications, and every ICANN region is represented. It's about 13 different countries also represented. Among the RSPs, there are 40 applications submitted, and every ICANN region is represented. We'll continue to monitor. If you'd like more details on the application status, the IRT has opened the monthly calls on outreach and engagement to a broader segment of the community. Signing up for these monthly calls gets into the community digest and is something that all of you in EURALO and broader at large can be part of. The next slide, again, just reminds of what those categories who are eligible for the applicant support program. We were approaching these categories in less developed, less served regions with regard to DNS. From January, we took the outreach, engagement, and communications plan global, although an effort to find conduits and connections to less developed economies. I'm going to close with 3 quick asks. On the next slide is my ask number 1. I made a reference to the implementation review team calls on outreach, engagement, and communications. Here are the dates of the upcoming calls. If you have access to the community wiki, you can see them coming up. I'm working to make sure that it's easy for a broader segment of the community to sign up, because we would really like to get all of your feedback, all of your ideas through those channels. It's proven to be very valuable for us on the engagement team. The next ask on the next slide is have a look at the Next Round New gTLD website. Under Resources, there is a Champions Toolkit. It consists of slide decks, scripts, FAQs, fact sheets. This is for you to use. You don't need permission. You don't need to sign up. We have the ICANN languages available. We have request forms if you would like somebody to show up for an event you've organized. By remote is possible. By in person, we can discuss. Please fill out the online speaker form or just speak to the slides. They all have speaker notes. Organizations, a grant-making institution, a brand in your country interested in the gTLD opportunities and able to run a registry, send them our way. You can contact me directly. You can contact your regional vice president or email the address here. Or show up for one of our meetings. Thank you. I'm eager to hear the community reflections and look forward to continuing the dialogue with all of you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's a fabulous moment for our community, and I can work a lot to deliver all of this information. We see a lot of channels. You might ask questions or get the information and be more prepared. Please meet this roundtable as one new idea how we can do our outreach work for this. Next speaker is Steve Crocker. Steve is a very special guest of our roundtable and very special member of our community. Steve, please come to the microphone and tell us which lessons was studied from the previous round of new gTLD.
Thank you, Natalia. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been asked to speak about lessons from the previous round. For those who haven't been following me closely, I was on the board for a very long time. I was chair from 2011 to 2017. I was involved in the prior round, but I did not make a primary mission of what I was involved in. I focused mostly on other things. I know something about it, but do not claim to be a complete expert, and I have not been following things closely now. Those are my disclaimers. With that, I'll share my impressions and a couple of pieces of advice that I would offer to people who are thinking about applying for the next round. First and foremost, a new gTLD is expensive. The 2008 price tag was $185,000, but the actual cost to bring a new gTLD into operation was probably closer to $2 million. That's a lot of money. I don't know what it's going to be this time, but similar dynamics are going to apply. It's one thing to fill out the application form and write a check. It's a whole other thing to actually put a gTLD into operation. I think there were about 1,900 applications. 1,400 of them were ultimately successful. Some were dropouts and some were duplicates. And then of those, well, how did that turn out? Well, many failed. And some failed outright and they just turned it back in. Others have languished. That they didn't all fail. Some have been quite successful in the unintended or unusual way of being sold for a lot more money than they were purchased for. Some were just held in a portfolio and the whole portfolio was transferred. It's a little unclear what the statistics are. There's no comprehensive data. There are some anecdotes. One of the things that I would counsel is that if you're going to make an application, you need to understand what you're doing. One of the things that has bedeviled domain registrations in general, and most particularly the new gTLDs, is that there's a lot of bad actors, a lot of people who use domain name system for registrations for malware or for other kinds of things. And again, we don't have comprehensive and complete data, but informative information. One is that the bad actors are attracted at lower costs. Some registries below market price, some will even give it away for free as a kind of an ultimate loss leader to attract a large number of registrations. There's a recent report which is getting a lot of attention that was sponsored by ICANN, by the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. The name of the study that was done is called Informal, and there's a presentation tomorrow. There'll be multiple presentations, and the report is available. The numbers here come directly out of that report. They report that for a $1 reduction in the price, it leads to a 49% increase in the number of malicious domains registered with TLD. If there are free services offered, that leads to a very large increase in phishing activities. And if there's an application program interface, so that facilitates bulk registration, there's a report of a 401% rise in malicious domains. That's 4 times. Bad actors are discouraged if there are stringent restrictions, for example, in identifying who the registrant is and safety checks, and reported a 63% reduction in abuse. The conclusion is that if you're going to plan a new gTLD, think hard about what bad things can happen and how you want to deal with them. Think hard about the funding issue. What market are you going to address? Where will the new gTLD fit into the market? Think hard about how you want to operate this gTLD. What is your intended credibility, security, or integrity level? Setting a higher bar may increase your operating costs and attract fewer registrants. On the other hand, you'll be doing a much greater service. If you lower the bars, then you may get many more abusers. As I mentioned, it's peculiar that there's not enough data on which gTLD succeeded and why, and which ones failed. I suggest that EURALO and other parts of the ICANN ecosystem vocally ask for more studies in all of this. One point I want to emphasize, particularly since Chris Mondini talked about the applicant support program, is that the idea behind the applicant support program is quite laudable. It's a good thing. It's intended to help those with fewer resources apply. One thing that became very clear in the last round, and I suspect will also apply here, is that however much help the applicant support program provides, the much larger and more important issue to deal with is the fact that all told, whatever the fees are, is going to be but a small portion of the total cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's priceless message. And yes, it's a reason to think about the possibilities and strategy of developing operating TLD that meets the market needs and condition and security requirements. Would love to follow your advice to extract somewhere this knowledge about past round and So we understand the data from the market statistics. That's why we are happy to have today Simone Catania, Global Content and Communication Manager from InterNetX, with interesting information how new gTLD living on. So please, Simone, tell us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak at this EURALO Round Table. I've been part of the ICANN community for quite a few years now, but this is the first time I'm actively engaging as a speaker. So I just want to introduce myself very briefly. Been part of the domain industry for quite a few years. I was involved with the registry operation of 2 new gTLDs before transitioning to the core business of my current company, which is a registrar. This experience from new gTLD registry to registrar provide me with insight into both worlds. I will share data-driven insight today from the Global Domain Report, which is a report we do at InterNetX. So please, let's dive in. Here you can see that the new gTLD has shown growth since their inception. From 2014 to 2024, the number of registered new gTLD domain has increased, demonstrating a certain level of acceptance and adoption among internet users. There are some points that I want to highlight in this chart. If we look at the start, 2014, we saw the introduction of new gTLD with early registration numbering around 3 million. By 2016, this number had grown to approximately 26 million. Fast forward 2024, we had some up and downs, and the figure reached almost 37 million, showcasing a total growth of 922% in a 10-year timeframe. By 2026, new gTLD registration might surpass 50 million if we keep with this growth. It's important to understand the role of new gTLDs within the context of total domain registration. Looking at the data, new gTLD domain registration represents still a relatively small portion of total domain registration, even though they are slowly increasing. In this graph, you can see the total number of domain registration in 2024 and the number of new gTLD registration that contribute to this total, which is around 10%. This means of 364 million, 10% were new gTLD. But I want you to focus on the year-over-year we had in 2024. The total registration are growing by 1.2 year-over-year with around 4 million more domains. But if you look at the new gTLD, there are bigger figures. They grow almost by 16%. To understand more what is happening, let me break down this figure. This is what is currently happening. Legacy gTLD registration are declining, likely due to their saturation, which was predicted 10 years ago. That's why we introduced the new gTLD. And it seems like new gTLD now emerge as the primary driver of domain registration growth. This is a chart with the top 15 new gTLD registration in 2024. The chart seems kind of random, not following specific logic to explain why some extensions are more used than others. But this means that they can all be useful for internet user at the end. In 2012, at that time, I think few could predict that certain strings, such as XYZ, an extension with no specific meaning, would become so popular today. This factor is emblematic of the dynamic nature of the internet, and gTLD popularity can evolve based on user perception, trend, and branding adaptability. It's also worth mentioning that certain TLD have become popular based because they execute effective promotion, pricing strategies, partnership, and some registry even rebranded their new gTLD to give them new life in the namespace. So to conclude, what I showed can provide some insight for the next round to all of you. This is the report we do at InterNetX, and this year we dedicated some page to the new gTLD program, and we invited domain expert to share their opinion and thought, and ICANN as well. And yeah, I invite you to download it to stay ahead and see more data about domains.
Thank you very much, Simone. It's so very useful information, and I hope on our wiki page after our meeting, all the presentation will be ready to be downloaded for everyone. Without data, we cannot do nothing, and I may say that Simone Catania is an individual member of EURALO. It's great that we have data now, and we will have your updates with your new report. This data will bring us on the ground knowledge and help a lot of our community, because we know that each week, each CPWG call, we are discussing market and all of this data and knowledge segment. When we are looking at the leaders of new gTLDs, we understand that some TLDs may be using for abuse. That's why they are on the top of this list. I have no answer now, but maybe we will have it during our roundtable. And we understand that security and stability, it's too hot topic for us. And I would love to invite to the microphone Alan Woods, General Counsel in CleanDNS. Alan, please tell us about DNS abuse and as an issue for new gTLDs. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite. Going after Steve Crocker is great because he set me up quite nicely. The question I was asked for this presentation is DNS abuse an issue in new domains? DNS abuse has proven to be somewhat of an issue where it hasn't had proper attention, or where policies and procedures of registry operator might not meet the challenge. It is an easy question to answer, but maybe it's got a lot of nuance, of which I've got 8 minutes to try and figure out and give you an insight into it. First off, for anybody considering becoming a new gTLD registry operator, what I know as the DNS abuse amendments, but of course, as people in the new round will know, as just the DNS abuse obligations. For those who are not as familiar, I was privileged enough to work for a very large new gTLD registry operator for about 9 years in anti-abuse compliance and policy. I was one of the people who helped negotiate the DNS abuse obligations as well. DNS abuse is a defined term now as the minimum expectation of people who are running registry operators. And that is, you need to look at phishing, farming, malware, botnets, and spam, where it is a delivery mechanism for one of the others. What you need to know about these obligations is that they were aimed to be a minimum expectation. So in order to be a registry operator, you need to go in understanding that you have a minimum obligation in order to deal with certain amounts of DNS abuse. Now, very important in this, it's not just a matter of all types of abuse online will fall on the registry operator. It has to be abuse that is actionable. It is abuse that has actionable evidence, and these are written into the agreements. And there must be prompt action to take appropriate mitigation. Now, there are many ways in which one can deal with an instance of DNS abuse. It is not always going to be the registry operator, the registrar, or even a reseller who can take that action. It needs to be appropriate in that instance. You need to think about, is the action being taken? Is there evidence to support that an abuse is occurring? That would mean that action can be taken at the DNS level. There is a potential for a lot of collateral damage. You do not want to take down Amazon.com because one product is being sold that is illegal. You don't want to take down a person's business because they have been hacked or their website support has been hacked and a phish is occurring somewhere buried within their internet. You don't want to take down their emails. You don't want to take down their business, and you don't want to take down their support. So there's a lot of weight on action at the DNS level. When I started way back, at the beginning of the 2012 round, working as DNS abuse monitoring for a large registry operator with quite a number of top-level domains, all I had was a listing of what was considered to be bad domains. No evidence, no context, just that these were listed. It was very hard to take action. I was bombarded with lists on a daily basis saying these domains are bad. Luckily, over time, that has changed and has evolved and gotten better. Now, some still have lists that you need to trawl through to figure out. But point of it is that there is an awful lot of noise in the reports made to registries that are not necessarily for a registry to look after, reports made that are completely inappropriate for a registry to take action. So a complaint on a service provider website, maybe a hosting provider website, maybe a file share website, maybe on an online platform. So there's a lot of noise which a registry operator facing into a new gTLD needs to work through in order to ensure they meet these minimum expectations. My company, CleanDNS, provides DNS abuse management and monitoring for registries and registrars. At that time, we received 5.3 million reports, but only of those 5.3 million reports for our clients did we find 117,000 that were evidenced to a level that we could send to a registrar or take action to say something bad is happening and we can evidence that. So bear that in mind. A lot of noise, a lot of reports, but only a small portion of them should be actionable. Another thing I would impart upon you is due process, making sure you have the proper processes in place to ensure that you're making the right decision at the right time and that you are the right party. When a report of abuse is made, we need to be very careful, and I would say this to any registry operator starting out, a report of abuse does not mean that that is an actionable or substantiated report. You need to do some work on that, or educate the reporter to ensure that they send a report that has evidence showing that it is actionable or substantiated. It's not just about receiving reports. It's a whole audit trail from beginning to end. You need to think about where you're going to get your reports from. Under the obligations, you must have an email address for which you receive reports of abuse or a report form on your website. The next stage is not just accept that that is a real report. You need to verify, make sure that the evidence you receive is there and that supports that abuse is occurring. You then need to figure out some way of putting it into an escalation and sending it to the right party, or creating a case for yourself. If you believe it's egregious enough and that there is no potential for collateral damage, or the potential for that damage outweighs the actual impact to the victim, then you might take action yourself. You need a means to escalate. You need a means to action. And then once you've done all that, you need to make sure you monitor for appeals. So it is a very large end-to-end process. So put time and thought into how you're going to do that. Another thing I would encourage people to do is you need to also get involved. You need to have conversations about DNS abuse. Get involved in things like the registry stakeholder group if you are a registry. They have excellent DNS abuse subgroups. And get involved with DNS abuse efforts or online harm efforts outside of the ICANN sphere. Because remember, the ICANN sphere has a limited mandate. It does not deal with content abuses, but at times there's a difference between what you must do and what you should do as a registry operator. There are people who can help with DNS abuse management, like CleanDNS, but that's not the point of today. The point of today is to say you need to have a plan in place. And I would suggest reaching out sooner rather than later so that you don't, with your new TLD, just find it snowballing with DNS abuse. Take action, take a plan, and plan for DNS abuse will happen. It's what you're going to do with it is the important thing. Thank you.
Alan, thank you so much for this explanation and call for join this very important work. And just a short question from my side. If we may remember this list of leaders from the new gTLDs and maybe compare it with the most abused new gTLDs, what can you say?
From my experience, one or two of them, absolutely. Obviously, I'm not going to point out which ones they are. They're well clear on the internet. And some of the factors that Steve talked about definitely played a part in that potential for very low cost domains. But mainly it's about not understanding that the cheaper you sell a domain or the faster you sell a domain, the stronger you need to be in a transparent DNS abuse program. They move so fast these days. People who started with an issue have found it very hard to pull that back. You need things like potentially automation and strength. I do see one or two of them on that list, which I know are engaging very hard in the fight against it. If I may say, just because somebody is on the top of a list, abuse does happen. It's not just about the number of reports we see. It's about how they're dealing with it and responding to it. Like that iceberg, you only see the tip. There is an awful lot of work done on mitigation. And I see somebody shared the NetBeacon reporter down in the chat, but also they do NetBeacon map. And that's one of the reports that's showing how mitigation is also occurring. So we might have this amount of reports, but there's this amount of mitigation. And if there's a gap in between that they're still working on. So don't just look at reports, look at the actions that are being taken as well, because that is very important. They're working very hard, some of them.
Thank you very much for this additional explanation. I think it's very interesting that the market will have a lot of arguments because consumers would love to see cheaper prices, but cheaper prices will lead us to this DNS abuse rule. Let's wait for the Seattle meeting and how all of these DNS abuse obligations discussion will deploy. Now I would love to give the floor to Rolandas Japertas. Roland, please tell us about benefits for business, for market, and some points of attention for applicants around gTLD.
First of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me here. And I probably, from all of you, the least experienced in the domain industry. And I've been here only 1.5 years in this industry. It's really interesting. I'm business development manager for IT.com domains. So what can I say for the new applicants? Speaking to your friends, give advice to do not do these mistakes or those mistakes and what they supposed to look at. The most important, becoming a registry is not something to be taken lightly. It has to be taken very seriously, and it is a lot of money can cost. They will need to think through their entire plan, including the 4 points I would like to say. The purpose of the TLD is very important direction. The registered distribution market, how they planning to distribute, how they're going to reach. It's not easy at all. And positioning, messaging, and promotional practices, all this has to be written down. When we're talking in terms of the policies, policy development for pricing, premiums, reserved names, terms and conditions, abuse IDNs, dispute resolutions, privacy policies, RSP and integrations, to work which companies for the RSP, or you have your own backend. Registry launch schedule, domain life cycles. You don't need to be tech giant. You always can come to some RSP companies who will help build a strategy around your idea. The best good advice probably it would be those who have idea for the new registry streams to keep it in secret until they sign the NDA with the RSP providers.
I know that you are in Africa now, so you are providing all of this information about access to applicants and special support program too?
Yeah, I'm right now at the event about data centers and the AI technology, which is rising very rapidly. Africa is all about cheap energy, and they want to become the hub. Europe will be able to use African data centers because the energy is cheaper and the labor is cheaper. When we're talking about AI technologies, to generate AI video, it requires a lot more storage. It requires more data centers and so on. As I saw some slides, they said that it is growing so fast, basically.
Great you are there and great you are here. Thanks so much for being with us. I see a lot of questions in the chat, so you all may answer. So please do that, but I hope we will have a time for the question and answer time at the end of this meeting. Thank you, Roland. For us, it's very new to have someone from the business area. We are meeting each other at ICANN meetings, and I think it's very important to have this exchange and understand much more for end users. We're caring about end users, but to understand more about how business is supporting this development and what is this new round for actors. Thank you so much for being with us. Now I would love to give the floor to Sébastien Ducos from GoDaddy. GoDaddy, no need to be introduced because GoDaddy has a very vivid life as a registry and registrar. So tell us, please, Sébastien, are you ready for new round of gTLD?
Hi, thank you, Natalia. I'm part of GoDaddy Registry. As you will see, the design of this presentation doesn't follow the GoDaddy charter. I kept it very zen and unbranded. I wanted to talk to you about a specific part of this program. Sébastien, at the top of the discussion, asked if there was any changes to the ICANN cuisine for this program. This is one of the bits that has changed most of the recipe. I'm going to talk about how registries or backend registries are being accredited to be able to participate in this program. In 2012, when you wanted to make an application for a TLD, you had to fill in a huge form following the applicant guidebook, about 600 pages worth of data that you had to give. About half of it was to describe the technical solution that you were going to use, assuming that every applicant for a new gTLD was going to have their own solution and operate their TLD on their own system. What quickly came to light is that out of 1,900 TLDs, there's less now, there's about 1,100 TLDs today. There are only really about 30 different platforms. If you look on NTD stats, it will say 37 providers, but actually there's a number of providers that use somebody else's platform. So these are the ones that we're talking about. During the program, every time a TLD was being checked, it was also being checked technically in pre-delegation testing. These things meant a huge amount of work as TLDs were being rolled out and delegated. It meant also that there was only a number of TLDs that we could delegate at any given time because of that testing and the fact that the testers themselves couldn't look after everybody at the same time. Throughout this 2012 program, even though it didn't really exist, it was envisioned in 2012, the concept of backend registry operator arose. In this program, it was very much taken into account and pivoted. So what is happening now is that those registry service providers are being tested and are going to be accredited, which means that a new applicant for a TLD will be able to choose from a list of accredited backend operators or bring a new one that will be accredited the way we did in 2012, but leaving most of the work being done freehand, actually a year before this year, when the application program is not going to start until mid next year. We've recognized also in this process 4 major type of registry operators. When we think about this industry, we very much think about operations, the registry part, the few seconds that it takes for you to fill in the name of the domain you're looking for, your identity, pay, you register a domain. The demand on registries wasn't just getting the registration and the money in, but also delivering a DNS service for a year at a time, up to 10 years. That DNS service is a second component of this accreditation. The market has demonstrated there are some people specialized in registries, others in DNS, others do both. DNSSEC was a big part of the program in 2012. It continues being pushed heavily, probably not with as much follow-up from the market, but at least it is an intrinsic part of this program. DNSSEC is another component of DNS, but a component also that has demonstrated in the market that there are people that are more specialized in it than others and people that just do that. The last one, that proxy type of accreditation, actually, to my knowledge, only refers to what is happening in China right now by demands of the Chinese government. when a TLD wants to operate in China, they need to have specifically in-country escrow and registrant verification and all sorts of things that demand a special type of accreditation. So that's the full type of accreditations. The other new thing is that whilst that technical accreditation was happening within the fees of an applicant, the technical backends are paying a fee in order to get technically accredited. That is no longer part of the application. The application has also raised its price from 10 years ago, but I hear that's inflation. The last bit of the change is that it existed already in 2012, but that's been sort of overhauled. Part of the accreditation is presenting a dossier saying, this is what I'm operating, how I'm operating, why I'm doing it in a secure way, why I'm competent at what I'm doing. The other one is actually technical testing. That technical testing had been done for 12 years by the Swedish CC-TLD operator, which I think that after 12 years had enough. ICANN went through a lot of work automating the technical testing, which essentially means that is a sort of a self-service for backend operators to present what they want to test. Do you want to test IDNs? Do you want to test the registry function? Do you want to test who is, etc.? You present a dossier in the form of a test file, which you can schedule at will and operate at will. That also will help greatly streamline the work, because you go from weeks of monopolizing people in Sweden to help you go through this to hopefully only days of testing. Some of the tests actually take days, particularly on DNS and that sort of stuff, because it's very heavy testing over long periods of time. Chris at the top of the hour talked about 40 operators. I went back to the page as of end of January. So I guess there's a lot of people that raised their hand in the meantime. I had 19 operators at that point from just about around the world. Mine is actually one of the 8 pending. We are in the process, but for some reason, when it was reported, we hadn't yet put where we were from. I suppose that it would be North America, but I'm not quite sure. In any case, this is early days. We're still at opening that dossier and filling the administrative part of the experience, presenting your ISO certifications, that sort of stuff. We will get into the actual meat of the testing in the next few months. The idea is to have, by the end of the year, a list of accredited backend registry operator. It's a pass-fail. You'll have a list of people that are accredited. There's no grade as to which one is the fastest and which one is the nicest, but you'll know who you can put on your application as a backend registry operator. A quick note, because I've heard a lot about DNS abuse and that sort of stuff, there are tools designed to track the abuse in your TLD to help you go through what needs to be done to take care of the abuse, not particularly in terms of policy, but in terms of tracking. Alan was talking about it. I'm not here to advocate in any way, but since DNS abuse is now a component of the contract of a registry operator, could be, for example, a new type of accreditation for the next round, not now. This was designed before DNS abuse was included in the contract, but it is one of these types of accreditation. What we've done now is the learning from 2012. We'll keep on learning and possibly evolve this. And that was all for me. Thank you.
Sebastien, you were talking about backend registry and services like that. Contractually, which countries are harder to provide these services to, like there are reasons not to do service for some countries?
I can't answer that specifically. I know that we're a US-based operator, and as a US company, we're limited in our actions worldwide by the rules of OFAC. I don't have the full list of the countries that you can or not work with according to OFAC, but it's basically following that. There is no other policy of ours, but we do have to comply with those.
Thank you so much, Sebastien, for your explanation. It matches a lot of work done, and a lot of work will be done during this year. So we will together develop a healthy and competitive domain market. This question might be asked during this roundtable or after that. Thank you so much again for being with us and for this explanation. We're going to the next speaker. You know that EURALO is a home of end-user voices from a European region. We would love to know much more and to listen about community dreams come true and expectations of end users. Olivier Crepin-Leblond, co-chair of the at-large Consolidated Policy Working Group and one of the great leader of our community, takes the floor and tell us about this.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Olivier Crepin-Leblond speaking. I've put the link to ofac.treasury.gov with regards to OFAC. Get on this quickly before Doge decides to close it down. You never know, these things disappear very quickly. As an end user, I'm going to comment and provide three perspectives. The first one is as an insider, as an at-large community member. The second one is as a registrant of domain names. And the third one is as an internet end user. First, as an insider, as an at-large community member, the first thing is we know a lot more about the different rounds of generic top-level domains. We'd even know about the difference between the country code top-level domains and the generic top-level domains. Some of us have lived through the several rounds that have been undertaken over the years. The first few rounds were actually quite unstructured, and these date from even before ICANN was created. The legacy domains, .net, .org, .com, .gov, those ones really predate ICANN, and the structure as to how these were put together is outside the scope of this discussion. We'll forget the .post and the .xxx, which also predate a lot of the current processes that have been put in place. The one that we can focus on is the last round, the one in 2012. We know there were quite a few issues that we learned about as it was implemented and in post-launch analysis. I must admit that as a community member, the level of diligence in the GNSO and shown by the whole ICANN community in taking part in the PDP on subsequent procedures and also the implementation recommendation team means that a lot of the problems that we saw in the last round are quite likely going to either be resolved or mitigated by the procedures which have now been added. I think that's something that we really need to note, because on the one hand, you might say, well, it's taken more than 10 years to do this, but it does take time to do things diligently and cleverly in a way that we're not going to end up with another set of problems. That's something to be noticed, and we need to be thankful as a community that everyone has played ball. Whilst there have been pressures to get on with it, I think everyone's quite happy to be in the last stretch before the next round gets going. As an end user, as a registrant of domain names, and here I'm looking at it on a personal level or perhaps on a business level, the first thing about having more extensions is to have choice. Any business today needs to have a name on the internet that relates to what they're doing or close to their name. Unfortunately, if you just stick to the .coms, .net, and .orgs, you're going to find out that 99% of the time, your name is going to be taken. Your first choice of name is going to be taken. Admittedly, having more extensions during the last round has eased that problem. But let's say I run a company that deals with motorcycles, and I'm not going to get a .pizza because I'm not dealing with pizza. So you need to look at things in a way that will serve your business and align closely to what you do and what you want to both sell or market to the people around you using the internet. The second thing, I guess, is the more offer there is, the more the prices will be coming down. What I mean by prices coming down is the end of this idea of having domain names at premium prices. What do I mean by premium prices? $10,000, $20,000, $1 million for a domain name. How crazy is this? And yet it has happened. Many domain names were sold at these very high inflated prices. There's still some very valuable domains out there. I'm not saying they should be kicked out altogether, but what I'm saying is that for new people to bring into a business, having a domain name that you need to dispense tens of thousands of dollars for is not something that you want to do today. Having more choice will definitely bring prices down, and it already has. I'm not saying it needs to go to $1 per domain name, but when you're in the region of $10 to $20 or $30 worldwide, this is not going to kill a business or a not-for-profit organization, even with a very small budget as such. And then there's also the importance of having a provider that I can deal with easily. What countries are you not allowed or are you not going to deal with? Well, there are some countries in the world where it's pretty hard to get service. I'll give you an idea. Most countries in the world do not have the ability to get a delivery from Amazon. Many people in the world don't have a credit card. So if the registrar of the domains you want to purchase only accepts credit cards and doesn't accept other types of payments which might be used a lot in your country but are not used out there, then you really are at a disadvantage. So I'm really looking forward to this growth in the diversity that is out there. I also think that as communities make use of the new gTLDs, I really hope that those communities that are not either geographically defined, but are more of a loose organizations or loose communities of people will be able to get their domain names in this round. But of course, it's an expensive thing. They'll have to make their own choices and their own calculations on this. Finally, as a user of the internet, one of the big concerns I had in the last round was this whole question of having a multiplication of top-level domains was going to make the internet unstable, confuse people, be the beginning of the end, a whole lot of problems, maybe lots of domain name abuse and lots of malware, etc. The internet is still extremely stable. The multiplication of top-level domains has not made it any worse than it was before. DNS abuse is what it is. But it's not directly related to the number of new top-level domains. At the same time, it's made it really easy as an end user to get onto websites, to send emails, to have shorter domain names. A few years ago, there were huge, long domain names that you had to type. Nowadays, you can have shorter ones because there's a lot of choice. As an end user, really, I just want facility, something that's easy to use and that's not going to confuse me even more than before. So yes, I think it's time to get on to the next round. Let's hope that we get those people that were not there during the last round to have the ability to proceed forward with making an application and not only getting applicant support, but also support from the industry that is already existing for them, this back-end provider, the more complex things that some might find if they had to design everything from scratch. I think that I'll stop here. Thank you.
We have not much time for this discussion. I hope we may have about 8 or 9 minutes for comments, questions from attendees. So please raise your hand. Johnny, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Natalia, and thank you for the panel members. First of all, for Alan Woods, when you are speaking about DNS abuse, you mainly spoke about registries, while most of the abuse should be dealt with at the registry level, because it is mostly a website who is doing trouble. And if you go to the registry, you will act at the domain name level, which is very dangerous. You will make harm to several other parties that doesn't have any relationship with the abuse. Now, coming back to our new gTLD program. I heard you, Steve. You are right. The application and running a registry is very expensive. That's right. I agree with you. But I still think that the DNS industry should have a sort of diversity. And I think that the program should be inclusive to underserved regions and underserved communities. But unfortunately, this round, rather than supporting the underserved regions and communities, it is supporting much more non-profit organization, intergovernmental organization, as if the governments have need for financial support, the small businesses and indigenous community. So you see that the underserved regions and the underserved community in general are not included. This is a problem in my point of view, and I think this ACE program is the worst. The 2012 one was not good. It wasn't successive. We didn't have any possibility to support any of the applicants. This round we will have at least 40 applicants supported, but I think that most of them will be from the global north, unfortunately. So I think this is a failure, and I hope it will not be like this. I hope I am wrong.
Thank you very much, Tijani. I think we all are sharing your point of view. I think all questions from the chat are so Sebastien, please go ahead. Sébastien Bachollet.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I will talk in English. I wanted to come back to what Steve said about data. At the beginning of ICANN loves the 7. It used to be 7 legacy TLD, and then in 2000, ICANN introduced 7 new gTLD. It was not enough because one of the problems we faced at that time was no data. Therefore, ICANN launched an additional round. It was also 7 at the end. We are still, after round in 2012, asking for data. I don't understand how ICANN is not able to provide data. It was a request since the evaluation of the first round or the first time of addition of a new gTLD. Therefore, it's important that I can find a way to have the data we need as an organization to understand what is happening in the gTLD or in the TLD world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sebastien. Alan, please go ahead.
Thank you. And very quickly, just to say, Tijani made a very important point, that is that takedowns at the DNS level are not necessarily the best thing for the domain name system itself. However, there are instances where it is a good thing. With the proper safeguards in place, it can be a very good idea to prevent harm, especially in maliciously registered domains. That's a whole other discussion. What I will say is it is important. An awful lot of the conversations at the ICANN level are focused on registries and registrars doing more, but an awful lot of the conversations with registries and registrars are with hosting providers and internet service providers, so that we're not all stuck in the same group, that we're talking about who should take action at the most appropriate level with the most minimal amount of collateral damage. That is a very important conversation. So yes, very well made.
Thank you, Alan, for your comment. Tijani, please go ahead. I think it might be a last question or comment for today.
Yes, thank you, Alan, for your reaction. I would like to ask you, what do you think about the notion of trusted notifier? Because the notification is an issue also. How to know if the notification is relevant or not, and the registry and the registrars will not lose their time to verify if the notification is relevant or not. Thank you.
If you'll permit me, Natalia, I would challenge you on that one, Tijani. Think of the concept of a trusted verifier as opposed to a trusted notifier. And that's a whole other conversation that I'm happy to have at any other time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this exchange and conversations. We have now the time for Avri Doria, at large CPWG co-chair. So Avri, please tell us about a session during ICANN 82.
Sure. Thank you. Avri speaking. I should introduce myself just a little. I've been involved with new gTLD since I first came to ICANN in 2005. I've been involved in a lot of projects in various roles with different hats. This agenda item for Seattle has to do with the soft side of the commitments. There were many issues that either at large or other advisory committees would bring up and saying, this is really important. This has to be taken care of before the next round. What I've put in the chat is sort of the worksheet for this. I don't have slides ready for it. It's still a couple weeks away. It's still being formed, still finding the speakers. But anyhow, it's sort of the plan of this ALAC session. There's been talks with people, either people on the board or people on the GNSO or elsewhere. Sometimes when I had a different hat, I may have been one of them that would listen to these and say, yep, that's being worked on. Yep, that'll be taken care of. No need to worry. You know, those are the issues that will be taken care of. From my perspective, sitting and watching the IRT and everything else, I'd say, yeah, by and large, things have been taken care of. I look at it and say, yeah, they've really done amazing work. You listen to the answers of the questions. However, I'm not sure that those that either don't follow it as closely or have a broader understanding of the issues that I do might have that same impression. And one of the things I'm hoping we can avoid is any last minute. We're not quite at the last minute yet. So any last minute, oh, but you promised you can't go forward with this now because AB. So wanted to look at that set of issues. What we're doing for this one within at-large ALAC is took the set of issues, and I think it was 8 of them, that had been the subjects of various ALAC advice or concerns or emails to the GNSO, go through them, find out which ones were still really important to the people within the active working crew within at large and such. And for those that were important, sort of say, was it solved? Is it all hunky-dory now and everybody's happy? Or is there still an issue or you don't really know? We're setting up this session to go through 2 of those issues, finding someone who's willing to take the line, yep, the problem is taken care of, it's all good, versus somebody still in the doubt stage. It's but there's this, but there's that. So a discussion of the people in the room, and then finally a retort. If you go down in the worksheet I've given you, you'll see how it goes. There's a yes, no discussion, then the no and the yes, and go on. It's about a half-hour block for each of the subjects. We did a poll on those and found that the top 2, which is coincidentally a lot of what's been talked about today, had to do with the DNS abuse issue. That was one that was most likely to be uttered. That's got to be fixed or else no other round. Of course, such things were never formalized. Such things were never real. People felt them. So I'm kind of looking with this session of where are the feelings on these? Have we achieved the state we really need to have a community happy about something? The other one was the applicant support program, another one of the great issues of things that needed to be fixed. So you've got the description of the program. Speakers have yet to be defined, looking for the appropriate protagonists and antagonists to have a good debate and hoping for an interesting discussion. There are many other topics, but these were the top 2. Hope I didn't talk too much, Natalia. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Avri, and definitely it will be absolutely nice and excellent session. So look forward to our next meeting. And it looks like each of these roundtable or discussion, it is rising up the wave of question and arguments against, and a lot of criticism, of course, a lot of prediction. We will check it. I would love to thank all of you, our fabulous speakers and guests, for our attending of this roundtable. I hope it might be very helpful for our community. And so the harmony of all our efforts will lead us to success of this program, I hope. So, but we might be realistic and we might be very careful, and our community members too. I am giving the floor to the EURALO chair, Sébastien Bachollet now.
Thank you very much. Nothing to add. Thank you very much for all the presenters. Thank you for the one who listen and participate to this discussion. Thank you for the staff to organizing that. Thank you for the interpreters. It's a very useful and important tool, and I am very happy that it's now embedded within Zoom. It's really nice. I hope that this conversation will be followed during ICANN 82 and maybe another roundtable in the future. Well done, Natalia, and thank you very much for all the participants. You have to know that we are organizing at EURALO various roundtable. We try also to organize some roundtable with our colleagues from the other EURALO called Cross EURALOs. During the ICANN 82, there will be 2 plenary sessions if you are interested, the one presented by Avri and another one organized by Paris Esfandiari about internet core issue, and that's something you may wish to follow. Thank you, everybody. We have 3 minutes to go. Natalia, you want to take back the floor for those 3 minutes? I am done. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. I thank everyone. I will miss you because I will online in Seattle, but in my heart and my mind with you, and I will follow all of this and not just this discussion. So see you, take care, and have a nice night, evening, afternoon, morning. Thank you.